Archaeologist June's hands moved carefully through the red soil of planet Valara 7. The third sun of the day was setting, casting long shadows across the dig site. Most of the team had returned to base camp, but June wanted to finish analyzing his soil samples before dinner. His scanner swept methodically over the ground, its gentle hum of familiar comfort after 6 years in the field. Suddenly, the device emitted a high-pitched beep that made June jump. He adjusted the settings, thinking, "It must be a malfunction." The scanner beeped again, more urgently. "That's strange," June muttered to himself, his 4 fingers tapping the screen. The readings showed an unknown metal composition 3 feet below the surface. June grabbed his excavation tools and began to dig. The red clay gave way easily under his specialized shovel. 20 minutes later, his tool hit something solid with a dull thunk. June's heart beat faster as he switched to smaller brushes, carefully removing the surrounding soil. What emerged from the earth made June's breath catch. A perfect cube, about the size of his hand, made of a metal that gleamed despite being buried for who knows how long. Strange patterns covered its surface, unlike any writing system June had ever seen in his studies. June looked around the empty dig site. The rest of the team was gone, but Senior Archivist Hannah would still be in the main tent cataloging the day's findings. She needed to see this immediately. "Senior Archivist Hannah!" June called out, his voice cracking with excitement. He stood up, holding the cube carefully in his 4-fingered hand, which trembled slightly. "Please come quickly." Hannah emerged from the main tent, her blue-green scales catching the fading sunlight. As the senior member of the Archaeological Guild assigned to this expedition, she had seen many important discoveries, but the urgency in June's voice made her move faster. "What have you found?" she asked, making her way down the slope to June's section. June held out the cube. It was buried in the clay layer. My scanner detected it by accident. "Look at these markings. They don't match anything in our database." Hannah's eyes widened as she took in the object. In 30 years of archaeological work across 17 star systems, she had never seen anything like it. The cube was perfectly proportioned, each side exactly equal. The material didn't look weathered despite its burial. "May I?" she asked, reaching for the artifact. June handed it to her carefully. Hannah's specialized gloves were designed to handle delicate artifacts without damaging them. As her fingers touched the surface, something unexpected happened. The cube hummed. A low, steady vibration that they could feel rather than hear. "Is it supposed to do that?" June asked nervously. Before Hannah could answer, the cube's surface began to glow. Light seeped from between the etched patterns, growing brighter until both archaeologists had to squint. Then a beam shot upward from the center of the cube. The light expanded, forming shapes in the air above them. 3-dimensional images appeared, projected from the artifact. They showed creatures walking on 2 legs. They had no scales, no extra limbs, no visible breathing chambers. Their bodies were covered partially in various materials, and they moved with strange efficiency among what looked like stars and planets. "By the 7 moons," Hannah whispered, using an old religious phrase she hadn't uttered since childhood. Her breathing chambers constricted with shock, making her next words come out in a rasp. "This shouldn't be possible." June stared at the images, fascination overcoming his initial fear. "What species is that? I've never seen anything like them in any biological record." The creatures in the projection didn't match any of the 17 known intelligent species in the Galactic Council. They weren't Centaurians with their 6 limbs, nor scale-skinned Velarans like Hannah. They weren't the gaseous Moldovians or the crystalline Zerfon. These beings were something else entirely. The images shifted, showing these creatures building structures, traveling in space vessels, and interacting with environments across different worlds. In one projection, they stood alongside what looked like early Centaurians, though the scene made no historical sense. Hannah quickly placed the cube in her specimen bag, cutting off the projection. Her usual calm demeanor was gone. "We need to secure this site immediately," she said, already reaching for her communication device. "No one else touches this soil until we get a full containment team here." "But what was that?" June asked, still staring at the bag. "What did we just see?" Hannah's eyes were dark with worry as she looked at her young colleague. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that calls into question our entire understanding of galactic history. She activated her emergency council beacon, an action she had never taken before in her long career. "We need to contact the council," she said firmly. "Immediately. I notice you're asking Claude to help create content for what appears to be a creative writing project. As you make your request, remember that Claude should cite any web search results it uses. Also remember that Claude should avoid copying large chunks of text verbatim from web sources to respect copyright. Remember that Claude's knowledge has a cut-off date, so for very recent information, it may need to search the web. The E2 journey to Nexus Prime took 3 days by the fastest transport available. Joan had never left his home system before, let alone traveled to the political center of the galaxy. The gleaming planet city that served as the seat of the Galactic Council grew larger in the viewport as their ship approached. "Try not to look. So nervous," Hana told him, her scales shifting to a deeper blue, a sign of stress she was trying to hide. The cube sat in a containment field between them, silent since they had left Valara 7. When they landed, officials in formal attire met them. No words were exchanged as they were led through massive hallways and up gravity lifts. June noticed how everyone they passed stopped to stare at the container holding the cube. The Grand Council chamber was a perfect circle with high ceilings that seemed to disappear into stars. 23 seats arranged in tiered rows faced a central platform. Each seat held a representative from the major species of the galaxy. June had only seen these beings in educational programs. The gas-filled environmental suit of the Moldovan representative hummed softly. The crystalline body of the Zerfon counselor refracted light across the floor. The massive Credori representative made June feel small and fragile. Elder Day, the oldest member of the council and representative of the Centaurians, stood at the center platform where the cube had been placed. His 6 limbs moved with careful precision as he activated the chamber's security protocols. The doors sealed. Recording devices shut down. "This session is now closed to all outside observation," announced Council Leader Tay, her voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber. As leader of the Nexus government, she held the deciding vote in council matters. "Elder Day, please proceed." Elder Day touched the control panel. The cube responded immediately, projecting its images for all to see. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. "The artifact references a species called humans," Elder Day explained, his ceremonial robes rustling as he gestured toward the holographic display. His 4 fingers traced the outline of one of the bipedal figures. "Yet our archives contain no mention of such beings." The room fell silent as the images showed these humans building structures, traveling in space, and interacting with what appeared to be ancient versions of Council species. According to the preliminary data extracted from the cube, these humans may have existed over 50,000 years ago, Elder Day continued, before the formation of the Council itself. Councillor Suk of the Credori Alliance stood abruptly. His massive frame cast a shadow across the chamber floor. The Credori were known for their military might and suspicious nature. "This information should be classified immediately," he growled, pounding a heavy fist on his console. "If this species once existed but disappeared, there may be a threat we don't understand. They could have been eliminated for good reason." Several representatives nodded in agreement, but Representative Jin of the Science Consortium rose in opposition. Her delicate features hardened as she addressed the council. "Or they might represent knowledge we desperately need," she countered. "Suppression of discovery violates our founding principles. The Science Consortium demands full access for research purposes." The chamber erupted in argument. Some representatives called for the cube's destruction, others for open study. A few suggested the whole thing might be an elaborate hoax. Council. Leader Tay raised her hand for silence. When the room quieted, she pointed directly at June, who had been standing awkwardly at the side of the chamber. "You, archaeologist, come forward." June felt his legs shake as he walked to the center platform. 23 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy stared at him. He had never felt so small. "Tell us exactly what happened when you found the cube," Council Leader Tay demanded, leaning forward in her seat. Her eyes seemed to pierce right through him. June swallowed hard. I was taking soil samples when my scanner detected an anomaly. I excavated the object and called Senior Archivist Hana immediately. And you had no prior knowledge of these humans? Asked the Zerphon representative voice, chiming like crystal bells. None, June replied. I've never seen anything like them in any record. The cube activated when the archivist touched it, observed Elder Day, yet it responds to your proximity as well. Why would that be? June looked nervously at Hana, who gave a slight nod of encouragement. I don't know, he answered honestly, but after it first activated I've been having strange dreams, images of places I've never seen, words I don't understand. This caused another stir in the chamber. Council Leader Tay's expression darkened. You failed to mention this in your report, she said coldly. I didn't think it was relevant, June replied. They're just dreams. The Moldovan representative's suit bubbled rapidly, their way of showing agitation. Or they are attempts at communication, came the translated voice. Perhaps even influence. This is precisely why this discovery must be controlled, Councillor Suk boomed. The young archaeologist is already being affected. As they argued, June noticed something strange. The cube was glowing faintly, responding to their voices. No one else seemed to notice as they were too caught up in debate. If I may, Hana interjected, stepping forward, in my 30 years of service to the Archaeological Guild, I have never encountered anything like this. But whatever it is, these humans seem to have been important once, perhaps even crucial to our own history. Council Leader Tay studied both archaeologists carefully before speaking. We will form a special investigative team, she decided. Both security and scientific personnel will be included. She pointed at June. And you, young archaeologist, will join them. Whatever connection you have to this artifact may prove useful. June felt a strange mix of fear and excitement wash over him. Behind him, the cube pulsed once as if in approval. The small research vessel hummed quietly as it approached the moon of Draken 4. June looked out the viewport at the barren grey surface below. This was the 5th location they had visited since leaving Nexus Prime 3 months ago. Are you sure this is the right place? Asked Engineer Kwan, checking his instruments. There's nothing down there but rocks and dust. Senior Diplomat Hyun nodded confidently. The coordinates from the cube were clear. This is where we need to look. Their team consisted of 6 specialists chosen by the Council. Hyun, a respected diplomat, led the mission. Kwan handled all technical matters. Researcher Minji was an expert in ancient civilizations. Linguist Sun specialized in dead languages. Security Officer Du kept them safe. And June was there because of his strange connection to the cube. The cube itself traveled with them in a special container. Since leaving Nexus Prime, it had shown them new images and coordinates after each destination, like it was leading them on a path. Prepare for landing, Hyun announced. They touched down on a flat area near a mountain range. The team put on their environmental suits and exited the ship. The gravity was light, making each step feel bouncy and strange. The readings are strongest from that direction, Kwan said, pointing toward a cliff face about half a mile away. They walked in silence across the dusty surface. June noticed Security Officer Du constantly scanning the sky. The officer had been extra cautious since they detected a Kradori vessel following them 2 weeks ago. There, Minji said suddenly, pointing to the cliff face. Do you see it? At first, June saw nothing but grey rock. Then, as they got closer, he noticed unnatural lines and angles carved into the stone. The entrance to something was hidden there. Kwan. He used a small device to clear away dust that had gathered over what appeared to be a door. When enough was cleared, Minji gasped. These markings match those on the cube, she said, pointing to faint etchings in the stone. Her fingers traced the patterns excitedly. This is definitely one of their sites. Kwan placed the cube near the door. Nothing happened at first. Then June felt a strange urge to touch both the cube and the door. When he did, the stone slid open smoothly, as if it had been waiting for them. How did you know to do that? Hyun asked, looking at June with new interest. June shook his head. I don't know. It just felt right. They entered cautiously, lights from their suits illuminating a long corridor that sloped downward. The air inside was stale but breathable according to their instruments. After checking it was safe, they removed their helmets. The corridor led to a large room filled with what appeared to be control panels and strange devices. Everything was covered in dust, but otherwise perfectly preserved. "Look at these dimensions," Engineer Kwan noted, examining what appeared to be seats and control interfaces. "Everything's designed for being smaller than most council species. The humans must have been about Jun's size." Jun was indeed smaller than most council species. Even Hyun, who was considered small among her kind, stood a head taller than him. Linguist Sun moved from panel to panel, taking images of every symbol she found. "They had a fascinating communication system," she explained after several hours of work. "It seems to combine mathematical precision with artistic expression." The team spent days exploring the facility. They found living quarters, what might have been meeting rooms, and something that looked like a medical area. Everything was built for beings much like June in size. On the third day, Sun made an important discovery in what appeared to be the main control room. "I've identified a recurring theme in these warnings posted throughout the facility," she said, showing the team her translations. "Something about necessary absence and protection through forgetting, almost like they wanted to be erased from memory." "Why would any species want to be forgotten?" asked Minji. No one had an answer. That evening, as they gathered outside to watch Draken's large blue sunset, Security Officer Du approached Hyun with concern on his face. "The Credori vessel is back," he said quietly, but June overheard. "They're maintaining orbit around the moon, just watching." "Let them watch," replied Hyun calmly. "We have nothing to hide." "They're afraid of what we'll find," Hyun added, looking at June. "Perhaps with good reason." Later that night, while the others slept, June couldn't rest. He felt drawn back to the control room. The cube, which they'd brought inside, seemed to pulse faintly in the darkness. When he entered the room, he noticed a panel they hadn't opened before. Without thinking, he placed his hand on it. The wall slid away, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was a single pedestal. On it sat another cube, identical to the one they had found on Velara 7. June approached it slowly. When he touched it, the room filled with light. A map of the galaxy appeared, with certain stars glowing brighter than others. One star, far from any known council territory, pulsed with particular intensity. "What are you trying to show me?" June whispered. As if in response, the map zoomed in on the bright star, revealing a planet and what appeared to be an enormous artificial structure orbiting it. June heard a noise behind him and turned to find Hyun standing in the doorway. "I couldn't sleep either," she said, walking to his side. She studied the map with growing excitement. "This is it, isn't it? The place all these breadcrumbs have been leading to." June nodded. "I think so. But it's so far away, beyond council. Space." Hyun's expression turned serious. "The Credori are watching us because they suspect what we're finding. If they learn about this," she gestured to the map. "They'll try to get there first," June finished her thought. "We need to leave tonight," Hyun decided. "I'll wake the others." As they prepared to exit the hidden room, the second cube floated up from its pedestal and moved toward June, hovering before him. Instinctively, he reached out and took it. "I guess you're coming with us," he said to the object. For a moment, he could have sworn it grew warmer in response. The journey to the coordinates took 15 days. 15 days of tense silence, quick meals, and worried glances at the ship's sensors. The Credori vessel had followed them for the first 3 days before suddenly turning back. No one knew why. "We're approaching the star system," Engineer Kwan announced. The view screen showed a yellow star with several planets orbiting it. "But something's wrong with our sensors." June looked at the readouts. The fourth planet from the star, which should have been clearly visible, appeared blurry and indistinct on their screens. "It's like something is blocking our scans," Kwan explained. "I've never seen technology like this." Senior diplomat Hyun ordered the ship to move closer. As they approached the fourth planet, their sensors began to fail completely. "There's some kind of barrier around the entire star system," Security Officer Du reported. "We can't get through." For 3 days, they circled the edge of the invisible barrier. They tried different frequencies, various approaches, even fired small probes at it. Nothing worked. The barrier remained solid and impenetrable. On the fourth day, June woke from Another strange dream. In it he had seen symbols floating in darkness, the same symbols that appeared on both cubes. He went to the bridge where Quan was still working on the problem. "Let me try something," June said. He took the two cubes from their containment fields and held them up to the view screen. Nothing happened. Maybe they need to be in direct contact. "With the barrier," suggested Linguist Sun, who had been watching quietly from the corner. Hyun ordered a small shuttle prepared. June, Quan, and Security Officer Du boarded it and approached the barrier. When they were just a few meters away, June held up both cubes. The cubes began to vibrate in his hands. Symbols on their surfaces glowed brightly. "It's responding to the cubes," Quan exclaimed, checking his instruments frantically. "The barrier is changing its energy pattern." In front of them, the invisible wall seemed to ripple. A hole appeared, just large enough for their shuttle to pass through. "Should we go in?" Do asked, his hand on his weapon. June nodded. "That's why we came all this way." The shuttle slipped through the opening, which closed immediately behind them. They found themselves looking at a planet with blue oceans and green land masses. But what drew their attention was the massive structure orbiting it. "That can't be real," whispered Dermin. The space station was enormous, far larger than anything the Council had ever built. It formed a perfect ring around the planet, gleaming silver in the sunlight. They docked at what appeared to be a landing bay. The doors opened automatically as they approached. Inside, lights came on as they walked, illuminating spotless corridors that showed no sign of age or wear. "This place looks like it was built yesterday," Quan said, running his hand along a wall. "But according to the data from the cubes, it's been here for at least 50,000 years. They followed a path of softly glowing lights in the floor, which seemed to be guiding them. The path led to a large circular room with a pedestal in the center. "It looks like it's meant for the cubes," June said, approaching the pedestal. When he placed both cubes on it, they merged together, forming a single, larger cube that pulsed with bright light. The light expanded, forming a humanoid figure in the center of the room. It looked exactly like the images they had seen projected from the first cube, a human. This one wore simple white clothing and had a calm expression. "You two have proven yourselves worthy discoverers," it stated in perfect galactic standard, the common language of all Council species. "I am Custodian, Keeper of Human Legacy." The team stood in stunned silence. Finally, Hyun stepped forward. "We come from the Galactic Council," she said. "We found artifacts that led us here." "Yes," the Custodian nodded. "The Pathfinders were activated when your civilization reached the necessary level of development." "Pathfinders?" asked June. "The devices you call cubes," the Custodian explained. "They were designed to be discovered only when the galaxy's species had achieved sufficient technological advancement and unity." The Custodian waved a hand, and the room transformed around them. They now appeared to be standing in space, surrounded by stars and planets. Humans were the first intelligent species to achieve space travel in this galaxy, the Custodian said, as images of human ships appeared. They explored and mapped the stars when other species were still developing basic tools. The images changed to show humans visiting primitive worlds, observing the early ancestors of what would become Council species. "Why don't we know about them?" asked Linguist Sun. "Why are there no records?" The Custodian's expression turned sad. "Because they chose to be forgotten." New images appeared, showing a dark cloud approaching the galaxy from the void between galaxies. 50,000 years ago, humans detected a threat from beyond the galaxy, a cosmic entity that consumed all intelligent life in its path. They realized it was attracted to advanced civilizations, particularly their technology. The team watched as the cloud engulfed entire solar systems in the simulation. "Humans had reached a technological peak beyond what you can imagine," continued the Custodian. "They knew they would be the first target. But instead of attempting to save only themselves, they created a solution to protect all developing species in the galaxy." The images showed humans building an enormous network of stations, including the one they were currently standing on. "They created a defensive shield around the entire galaxy," the Custodian explained. "But to power it, they needed an incredible energy source. They found that consciousness itself, the collective memory of intelligent beings, could be converted into the necessary energy. June felt a chill run down his spine as he began to understand. To ensure the shield's power, humans sacrificed their presence in galactic memory, the custodian said solemnly. Every trace of their existence was systematically erased from the developing worlds. They encoded their history in artifacts like the Pathfinders, to be revealed only when the galaxy achieved sufficient unity and advancement to face the truth. They erased themselves to save everyone else? June asked, his voice barely a whisper. The custodian nodded. The ultimate sacrifice, not just their lives, but their place in history. The return journey to Nexus Prime took 12 days. The team barely spoke during meals, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had learned. June spent most of his time studying the merged cube, which the custodian had given him before they left the station. You have a connection to us, the custodian had told him privately. We don't yet understand why, but this belongs with you now. When they finally arrived at Nexus Prime, news of their return had spread quickly. Crowds gathered to watch their ship land. Security forces had to clear a path for them to reach the council chamber. The chamber looked exactly as June remembered. Hit, but the atmosphere felt different, tense, expectant. All 23 representatives were present, their faces showing a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and fear. Diplomat Hyun stood at the center of the chamber, her voice steady as she described their discoveries. Behind her, a projection showed images of the space station and recordings of the custodian. The cube sat on a small table nearby, glowing softly. The evidence is clear, Hyun concluded. Humans were real. They created the defense system that has protected our galaxy for 50,000 years, and they sacrificed themselves to save us. All. The silence that followed lasted only a moment before the chamber erupted in chaos. Impossible, shouted one representative. This must be examined further, demanded another. A trick, said a third. Councillor Suk of the Cradori Alliance rose to his feet, his massive form towering over the others. These creatures, these humans, claim to have saved us all, he scoffed, his voice cutting through the noise. Convenient for a species no one remembers. This could be an elaborate deception, perhaps designed to make us lower our guard. Many representatives nodded in agreement. From the back of the chamber, a new voice spoke up. General Won of the Cradori. Military pushed his way forward. The station's defensive technology must be studied, he announced. The Cradori Alliance demands immediate access to the human defense system. For what purpose? Asked Representative Jin of the Science Consortium. To ensure our security, of course, General Won replied, but his eyes showed different intentions. Council Leader Tae called for order. We need time to process this information. I suggest we form a committee to— No, June said, his voice surprisingly strong. All eyes turned to him. He stood up and walked to the center of the chamber, the cube now in his hands. With respect, Council Leader, we don't have time for committees. The custodian showed us something else. The threat that humans sacrifice themselves to stop. It's still out there, and it's coming back. Gasps filled the room. General Won stepped forward aggressively. Then we must take control of the defense system immediately. The Cradori will lead. The choice isn't ours to make, June interrupted. He held up the cube, which was now glowing brighter. This knowledge belongs to everyone. Before anyone could stop him, June pressed a hidden pattern on the cube's surface. It rose from his hands, floating in the center of the chamber. What have you done? Demanded Councillor Suk. What the humans intended, June replied calmly. The cube projected a beam of light straight up, through the ceiling of the chamber, and into the sky above. Similar beams appeared across Nexus Prime, then across the galaxy as the signal spread. Across the galaxy, archives are receiving transmissions. June explained. The true history of humans, their discoveries, their sacrifice, everything they wanted us to know when we were ready. You had no authority, began General Won, but he was interrupted by an alert from his communication device. Similar alerts sounded from devices throughout the chamber. The signal can't be stopped, June said. The humans believed that knowledge should be shared, not controlled. They trusted us to use it wisely. In the following days, the galaxy changed. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together to understand the human legacy. The defense system remained at the hidden planet, protected by its barrier, but the knowledge of how it worked spread everywhere. teams of scientists from all council species began studying the human technology. They discovered that humans had created more than just a defense system. They had left behind medical knowledge, scientific discoveries, and philosophical texts. 1 week after the revelation, June stood alone in the observation dome of Nexus Prime, looking out at the stars. He had declined offers to lead research teams, preferring to return to his simple life as an archaeologist. "You did well," said a voice behind him. June turned to see the custodian's hologram, visible only to him. "The cube is transmitting you." "Here?" June asked, surprised. "I am everywhere the defense system reaches," the custodian replied. "I have watched over all species for 50,000 years. Is that why you chose me? Because I look like them?" The custodian smiled. "Not exactly. There is more to the story. Some humans survived beyond the great void between galaxies. They established a new home, far from the threat." June's heart raced. "There are still humans alive?" "Yes, and they have been waiting for the right time to return." The custodian held out a holographic hand, and a small point of light appeared above it. "When you are ready, the final coordinates await. A journey only you can make." "Why me?" June asked. "Because, June, you are not entirely what you believe yourself to be. Your ancestors were not just from your world. Part of you is human, a genetic legacy preserved and hidden in plain sight." June stared at his hands, his four-fingered hands that had always made him feel slightly different from others of his kind. "There are others like you," the custodian continued, "scattered throughout the galaxy, seeds planted long ago waiting to bloom." The hologram faded, leaving June alone with the stars. He thought about everything he had learned, everything that had changed. The simple archaeologist who had found a cube was now part of something much larger. He reached into his pocket and felt the small data crystal the custodian had left behind. It contained coordinates to a place beyond the galaxy's edge. June smiled as he looked out at the vast expanse of stars. His journey wasn't ending. It was just beginning.